Good day. We're back again with environmental law, and today we're going to look at the environmental framework legislation. Or specifically, we're going to look at Environmental Management Act. Looking at the different provisions on the Act. Quite literally, I'm going to help you read the Act, though you're supposed to read on your own the whole document. Let's go on right ahead. Now, the Act, it outlines different objectives, and we're going to look at those objectives. Are they being enforced or implemented? We're going to look at it. We're also going to look at key provisions of the Act. What is it that the Act brought about? And is it what are the different mechanisms and institutions that are established by the Act to ensure environmental protection? We're going to look at those as well. Now, so far, when we have been ranting on and on about the presence of pollution where we live, right outside our door, we have talked about the international community realizing the need for active realization of the right to a safe and healthy environment. Also, we saw the infiltration of international environmental law principles into national legislation through the domestication of international environmental law. We even analyzed the Constitution right to have a healthy environment. What does it entail? And the principles within that right, and we see those principles now in the Environmental Management Act. Now we're going to analyze the primary legislation. It is not the only one, but we're going to deal with this legislation alone today. There are others which you're going to read on your own so that you have a better understanding of environmental law and policy in Zimbabwe. Now, the Environmental Management Act, what does it do? It defines what it means to have an environment, right? Because according to Section 72, Subsection 2 of the Constitution, it says that the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures. Now comes in the legislative part. These are progressive steps by the state to ensure environmental protection. And this legislation is a response to Section 73 of the Constitution. Now, when this legislation came into force, it defined what it means, what the term environment means in terms of Zimbabwean law. Because as we stated in the first lesson, there are different definitions of environment, but according to Zimbabwean law, this is what the environment means, right? I will not read out loud because you all know how to read. So as we continue on, the objectives of the Act. Here says that it is an act that provides for the sustainable management of natural resources and protection of the environment. So we see from the get-go that we want to attain sustainable management of natural resources. We want to achieve sustainable development. So it is at the center of environmental protection in Zimbabwe, sustainable development. And we see from the infrastructural development, from mining activities, from the creation of industries and so forth, there are different mechanisms that are put in place by this act to ensure environmental protection. And we're going to look at those mechanisms, and there are different agencies, also institutions that are put in place to ensure environmental protection. Also, another objective of the Act is to prevent pollution and environmental degradation. Also, it is the preparation of national environmental plan and other plans for the management and protection of the environment. Also, there is the establishment of Environmental Management Agency or Environment Fund. Lastly, to amend and reference to intensive conservation areas and committees and associations. So these are the objectives that the Act has. Now, You as a student have to analyze these objectives and each and every one of them individually and say, okay, the first objective is sustainable management of natural resources. And then you look at the policies that were put in place, the institutions, the mechanisms that were put in place to ensure this objective is met. And through analysis of whatever research that you have done, you come to a conclusion that was this objective really achieved by the Act? It is up to you now. Those are the sort of questions that will be expected for you to answer. Did the EMA manage to fulfill its objectives? Those are the questions. As we continue on, has it achieved its objective? We say to provide management, is it sustainable management? We see that the mechanisms that are put in place to ensure sustainable development, the criminalization of pollution and so forth, have they been effective in there? And if they are not effective, what has contributed to their ineffectiveness, right? We're going to look at that one. And then you look at the other objectives through the same criteria, and you have to analyze on your own whether it has met its objective or not. And then we see the establishment of the Environmental Management Agency. We're going to look at that one in detail, the institution itself, and whether it is doing its job or not. And then we have the principles. I'm sure you're tired of them by now. But Section 4, General Principles of Environmental Management Act. Why are these principles important? The environmental rights and principles of environmental management, they serve as a general framework within which plans for the management of the environment shall be formulated. They serve as guidelines for the exercise of any function concerning the protection and management of the environment in terms of the Act. So this is why the principles are important from the beginning, that we have been looking and tracing how they were developed up until they became national legislation. So Section 4, subsection 2C of the EMA Act, the principles are ingrained, the provisions in their respective principles. You can see public participation. You see that at Section 4, subsection 2C, we see sustainable development. On E, we see polluter pays principle on Section 4, subsection 2G, and then we see the precautionary principle on Section 4, subsection 2F as we continue on. And then the Act also looks at the establishment of the Environmental Management Agency. We see the functions and powers of the agency. One of the functions includes to formulate quality standards on air, water, soil, noise, vibration, radiation, and waste management, to assist and participate in any matter pertaining to the management of the environment. And we will see here those that are written in red there: to regulate and monitor the collection, disposal, treatment, and recycling of waste, to regulate, monitor, and review, approve environmental impact assessments, to coordinate the production of a report on the state of the environment every 5 years. So is the Environmental Management Agency really effective in its functions? We see there one of the functions is to regulate and monitor the collection or disposal. If it is really effective in its function, there wouldn't be places like Majanke, places wherein it is highly populated and there is high pollution and people preferring Rodini and all those other suburban areas. If they were effective in being able to regulate, monitor, and review environmental impact assessments, we wouldn't have mining companies establishing creating their mining activities without environmental impact assessments. I would urge you to look at some case laws wherein there is evidence of the fact that mining activities right now, most of them, there are no environmental impact assessments because the Mining and Minerals Act, it does not, when it is issuing licenses, it does not include environmental impact assessments, though as we learned from the Save the Val case in South Africa, all administrative decisions that impact the environment should have environmental considerations, since the right to a safe environment is also is a constitutionalized right. So you see there is a need for consideration of environmental management in all policy decisions, administrative decisions, and so forth to ensure environmental protection, but that has not been effectively done in Zimbabwe. Now, please look at these provisions and analyze them, whether they're effective or they're just written words on paper without any value to our day-to-day activities. As we continue, the enforcement mechanism with the staff of the agency, what is their role? We see their role in section 37, the powers that they have been given. The different powers, it is to ensure that there is enforcement of EMA. So read up on those powers in section 37 of the Act. Then we have criminal sanctions, water pollutants, and if there's water pollution, it is here stated on section 57 of the Act what happens. You'll be guilty of an offense, you are liable for a fine not exceeding the level provided, or imprisonment. So we see the instigation of criminal sanction upon to ensure environmental protection. This also is seen on section 68 for those cars that emit too much pollution and go on leave while polluting. It is an offense. So if you see a car emitting too many greenhouse gases or carbon dioxide outside into the air, you see that they are committing an environmental crime in terms of section 68 of the Act. And then we have noise. It is also an offense to create noise pollution. You'll be guilty of an offense and liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding level 14. Different levels to fines and environmental protection, and you also resort to an imprisonment for a period not exceeding 12 months, or to both such fines and such imprisonment, right? And then there's the National Environmental Plan. So the minister is obligated to create a national environmental plan every year, and to ensure that this plan is made available to the public, so that there is increased public participation in things that relate to environmental protection. However, if you see at the website of the ministry, you see just how updated that plan is, and you see the effectiveness of this provision, saying the ministry shall or is obligated to create the national environmental plan. But look at this provision and then look at the website and see whether they are updating the national environmental plans or not, and see whether this provision is effective in ensuring environmental protection. And then we have section 97, which establishes environmental impact assessments, audits, and monitoring of projects. It says that first schedule projects. There are certain projects that should have environmental impact assessment before they are done, and this includes dams, drainage and irrigation, forestry, housing development, industry, mining, infrastructure. So they should have environmental impact assessment done before this project is initiated. And we explain what environmental impact assessment is. It's just an evaluation that is done before a development is done to ensure that, to assess whether there will be environmental harm or impact that will affect the environment, and if so, to try and mitigate environmental harm, right? And then we have section 99. It's just giving content. What do those environmental impact assessment reports contain? You see that one of the things that it contains is a detailed description of the project, state the reason for selecting the proposed site of the project, give a detailed description of the likely impact that the project will have on the environment, specify measures of proposed for eliminating an environmental impact, indicate whether the environment or any other country is likely to be affected by the project. Now we see the principle of good neighborliness, right? We are saying that these environmental impact assessments are to ensure that this project will not affect the environment or any other country. So this is what sections 99 is talking about. So yeah, this is the Environmental Management Act. Read the whole act. Please do not just rely on these slides or notes. Read the whole act and familiarize yourself with them. So these were the objectives, the principles, the institutions established, civil, criminal sanctions, the also administrative sanctions, the environmental impact assessment to ensure that projects do not adversely affect the environment. See you in our next class.